wonderful selection there from some of our customers around the world. All of those pieces of work have got two things in common. The first is that they've all been produced using the HAL, and the second is that they've all been produced using very, very good designers. And design is the key word. This is what we're going to talk about today. HAL is the video design suite, and we're going to take a little trip through the areas of video design. Let's start with a look at broadcast design. Many broadcasters around the world use the HAL to produce wonderful pieces of work like this one. An excellent piece of work there produced by B-Sky-B in London. This is the kind of work that HAL makes mincemeat of, compositing and multi-layering. Now what we'll do is we'll just take a quick look at that piece of work to really show you where the designer is coming from and how easy this kind of thing is to produce on the HAL. This is the background. We've got 3 or 4 layers there working together. And they've actually come from a very clever rostrum shot. Now, what we've got here is a load of logos that have been put onto bromide, placed in a water tank, and then put under the rostrum camera and moved around to get this wonderful watery rippling effect. And the designers actually produced 3 different layers of that to produce this multi-layered sequence. We can see here's another example. Now he's produced them in black and white because we can now take those and produce layers out of them. Now all we need to do is take, for example, this layer, take a copy of it, drop it over the top of itself, and that's now got a stencil over the whole of the clip. We can now use that stencil as a form of a pair of scissors. So for example, we can just take that into paste up, cut it out, place it onto a different colour background, and we can now begin to manipulate that in 3D space, or indeed add more layers. Now before I do that, I just want to show you the background. This is the original background, just a nice soft piece of silk maybe. It's in the wrong colour, so the first thing that we need to do is to go into the colour corrector. Of course, HAL's got fully loaded colour corrector within the system. And the first thing that we'll do is just take all of the colour information out. So we can see there throughout that whole clip, none of the colour is in there. Now what I'm going to do is mix up my own colour to add to that background. So I'm just going to mix up a sepia tone using the RGB channels to mix up, almost like I was mixing up paint in my palette. And again, we can preview that, and when we're happy with that, process it through. And that would take a couple of seconds to process this result. So we can see there, keeping all of the luminance and chrominance values, but just putting that colour correction over the whole of that background. So let's take a look at that with that layer that we were working with before. We can see the two working together, really showing you how we can move in and out of these various menus very quickly and see them working together. Now what we want to do is just to add a little bit of colour to that background. Now of course we can mix up colour within our paint box, or indeed we can use the system's numeric values to mix up any amount of colours and apply that directly to the screen. We can see there that we've just applied that particular colour. We can of course drop the opacity as well, and that's in fact as simple as that background was to produce. Obviously we've got more layers on this background, and also the mats were used in conjunction with the colour corrector to produce this background. So really giving you a very good idea of how simple that was to produce. So let's carry on. What about the layers that go on top? Well, we've got some raw footage here from London Fashion Week. The first thing that needs to be done to that is to, first of all, give it the same style as the background. So we're going to use that very same colour corrector. Now, of course, that's all still loaded in there from the previous time I used it, but I could of course as well have saved that and come back to it at a later date. So we can see there it's working again in the preview mode over the whole of that clip. Now what I want to do is do a selective key. I want to bring through the colour of this jacket. So I'm using the keyer. The key is found within the effects menu, which again means that we can move very simply and efficiently between the two areas and use them in conjunction together. So we can see once we've got our key, we can now use that in conjunction with that colour correction, and we've now got this wonderful duotone effect. Really simple when you break it down to this kind of level, but really this is what we need when we're dealing with designers. Designers need to be able to sit on a system, come up with an idea, and very, very quickly realise those ideas. Now we can see what we've got here is a layer, the layer that we've just been dealing with. That's been cut through this stencil. It's just a transparency, again placed under the rostrum camera and brought in. We've also got the ability to animate within the system, and we've just got a very interesting animated frame there. And on its own, it looks very simple, but used in conjunction with the colour corrector, we can see that we get a wonderful texture effect around the edge of that frame. And we just carry on, adding more layers of course, and also you can see there an edit being produced between the two clips and the layers coming in there. And just a final colour correction would have been added over the top and more layers added. You can see there the woman in the red dress. And before we move on, just a quick note about that. If you notice on the left hand side we've got this motion effect. Very simple to produce, again within the HAL. Here's the original footage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use average over 5 frames. And what this is going to do is it's going to take 5 frames and combine them into every one frame to produce this wonderful motion effect. Now we can also use other features within the HAL. For example, we've got the ability to slow down our clips or indeed speed them up using stretch and profile stretch. And of course we've got blur, motion blur and things like that within the system. So lots and lots of different features that can be used. Now if we just look at the result there, what we've got here is it's just been edited in with the raw clip to produce this wonderful stop-start effect. So there, very quickly, just giving you an idea of how that job was produced. We just take a look through that again. You can see really that that's all it was. Each clip has been treated using the colour corrector, then layered up to produce this wonderful multi-layered piece of work. Now not only is HAL found within broadcast, but also more increasingly today within post. HAL used to be known as a best kept secret in post-production. However, more and more people are discovering the secret behind the HAL, producing wonderful work like this. Excellent result there from a company called First Post in London. They deal with secondary post, they deal with corporate work, broadcast work like this, and also some commercial work as well. But probably most importantly about this whole job is the fact that first of all it was produced in under a day, and secondly a very, very talented designer was used to produce this wonderful piece of work, and everything that you're seeing here was produced within the HAL. No other system was used, no 3D systems, everything produced within the HAL. So let's take a look and break that down. Now once again, as with the broadcast example, a very clever designer was at the helm. Again, we've got a wonderful rostrum shot here. Simple idea, all it is a piece of aluminium foil with some lights shone on it, moved around underneath the camera. Really wonderful idea for a background. However, in its raw state, it's a little bit gaudy. So what the designer wanted was a way of making it a little bit more subtle. And they used the average feature that we saw within the last demonstration, and they've also slow-moed it. They've used a bit of profile stretch there to just slow that down slightly to give it much more of a subtle look and feel. Now the next part is purely because of HAL's power. We can take that clip into our paste up menu, and using our contour feature, we can apply 3D effects to that clip. So for example here, I'm going to use bend. I'm going to select the center point, and I'm literally going to place that center point right out the back of the screen. You can see producing this wonderful vortex effect. And of course this can be keyframed, so we can actually begin to move that vortex around to produce that amazing vortex background. And that's as simple as that was to produce. And as quickly as that refreshes is as quickly as it will render frame by frame. So really very, very quickly being able to produce this background here. So we're already well on our way to producing a very excellent piece of design. We'll just carry on taking a look at the various layers. Here we can see an example again, very simple idea, breaking that down into frames. We can see all of that is just a whole load of still frames edited together with this animation over the top. And of course we've got graphics within the system to allow us to produce circles and rectangles, and really that's as simple as that was to produce, just editing that together in that way to produce that really interesting piece of footage there. Now what we want to do is to combine that through this logo. All this is just 75 frames of still image. And again, very simply, as we did before in the broadcast piece, just producing the stencil for that. And also we've got this animated flash here of the logo again. We're going to use that as well as another layer. So just taking a copy of that, dropping it over the top, and that's now ready for me to take into Paste Up. So this gives me a chance to talk to you about Paste Up and to talk to you about multi-layering within the system. Now obviously, as I said earlier, we've got 99 layers available to us at any one time. And obviously with that amount of layers, we need a way of organising the layers so that they're easy to use both together and separately. Now, for example, if I wanted to maybe move the layers all at the same time, I can use a feature called Global. This is going to give all of the cutouts one global axis. So you can see here, just moving those two layers using that global axis. And at any time, if we want to, we can turn that global axis off and maybe position that top layer away in three-dimensional space. I can also make as many copies as I want and add that to the layers. And we can see another problem that we're getting here, which isn't a problem within the HAL. We can see that we've got the wrong priorities on these layers. Now, maybe I should go and cut all of the layers out in order. Well, no, of course I don't have to do that. All I need to do is take the number of that layer down to number 1, and that's now on the base layer. So we can see there very simply being able to control those. And at any time now I can just go ahead, open back up the global move, and now move all 3 layers together. And that is as simple as that to produce that effect there with the multi-layered logo. So a very simple idea again, produced by a very clever designer. Again, really proving how and why HAL is being found within the post-production facility house. The interface is simple, easy to use. Designers and clients can sit and work together and produce really wonderful work like this in under a day. Now, more increasingly, HAL is being found at the high end of the scale. HAL is being found with blue chip clients. For example, this piece of work here from Ambience Post Design in Sydney.
Imagine if you brought together the most experienced research and development team, the most experienced service engineers, and the most helpful customer care team
Patrick, hi.
The world's most experienced mobile digital network.
Excellent to see HAL earning the money for our high-end customers. Now, all of the work that you're seeing on screen was produced within the HAL, from the composite to the edit. So really showing the versatility of the system, going through all three areas of video design, from broadcast to post-production and high-end post. So where else can HAL be placed? Where else can HAL go? Well, what about special effects? Introducing HAL with transform effects, taking HAL into a completely new area. Everything that you're seeing on screen has been produced within the HAL. What I'll do is just break it up into smaller sections to give you an idea of how we produced this piece of work. So we'll start off with this sparkle effects at the beginning. Now, HAL has had a facelift and also so has Paintbox in the form of Paintbox Bravo. And of course we've got a fully integrated Paintbox Bravo within the system. What is Paintbox Bravo? Simply, Paintbox Bravo allows us to create infinite brushes. We've got our familiar brushes that we're all used to, and we've also now got an ability to create our own brushes. You can see I've got a selection of brushes within the system that I've created either by drawing them or by importing them in myself. Now, what I'm going to do on this piece is to just rotoscope a little bit of sparkle back into the rabbit. So I'm going to use an airbrush, and I'm going to use my size variable. This is basically going to allow me to vary the size of the brush depending on pressure. I'm also going to use spray, and now I'm just going to spray on to that frame by frame. Now, everything within all of our systems within Quantel is controlled by our pressure sensitive pen, which means that we've got all of the control over these brushes to make them as delicate or as heavy as we like. So for example here, if I press down heavily, we get more spray and bigger brushes, but still I've got the control to get a really delicate result after it as well. So really making it ideal for animations. All of the control that we love within these systems is still available to us with all of these new brushes. So they're very quickly just producing that little bit of sparkle there onto that rabbit. All of the effects within the system are personal to you. You create them. So for example here, this is an example of some sparkles that I've created using my spray and my rotoscoping to produce 9 different results, and each one has got a different brush used, different speed, different variables. So everybody is going to use this system in a different way, and this is the beauty of it. Infinite results that are completely personal to the designer. Let's just take a look again at that beginning piece. Let's have a look at the background. Now the original to that, if we just take a look, is a little bit less colourful, just got a very dull day. And what we want to do is use the colour corrector to add some colour. Now we know we've got a fully loaded colour corrector, we've seen that within our broadcast demonstration, but what we've not always had is this. If I just move to this part of the timeline, I'm just going to adjust the hue rotation, and what you'll notice is that we're getting what we call a keyframe move on that timeline, which means of course that we've got keyframeable colour. And this means that not only colour is keyframeable, but everything within the effects menu is keyframeable. So HAL is much more sophisticated now, but it's still just as easy to use because we've got this wonderful design of these graphs that will allow us to take a step back from our keyframe and adjust it depending on what we would like. So for example, if I maybe wanted to take the last piece up to the original colour, just go into that graph and pull it up by sight. So really being able to use this very simply and at all times see exactly what's going on within my colour correction. And of course I can get as complicated as I like. So for example, I can manipulate that graph to make the colours move in and out very quickly. And if it's getting a little bit too complicated around a particular area, I can maximise that area and take a closer look. So for example, if I wanted to make that linear in and curved out, I can do that very simply by adjusting the tangents of those curves. And again, when I'm happy with that, just go back out and look at the whole graph again. And of course that doesn't just stay with hue, we've also got all of the other features within our colour corrector, so I can just make that flash to light and dark within my brightness control, and again really showing how simple that is to produce. Now with all of these new features, you may well be thinking that this is going to be slower to process. Well, you'd be completely wrong. Although I've added all of these keyframes in, the system is still going to work blisteringly quickly. You can see there the yellow line rushing along the bottom there, and remember that we're dealing with full 601 digital quality video here, and all of those values that I entered in really giving the HAL no problem at all within its processing power. Just look at that wonderful result there, very quickly produced. Now also within the effects menu we've got keyframeable keyer, and this is in fact how we produced that bike effect. We can see here the bike appearing from nowhere. This is the original blue screen, and really going to show how simple that effect was to produce. What I'm going to do is show you. Going into the keyer, going to my first frame, I'm going to completely cover that with my key. Now I'm going to go to, say, frame 17, and at this frame I don't want the bike to be visible, so I'm just going to cover the bike up again with a solid key. Now the HAL knows that between those 2 points I don't want the bike to be seen, so it's going to work out all of the figures there. Now let's say at frame 41 I want the bike to be properly visible. I'm going into my values, and as long as I'm positioned on frame 41, everything I do, the HAL is going to work out up to that point. So you can see opening up the values there, allowing that bike to be fully visible, but the clever thing is that the HAL is going to work out every bit before that to produce this wonderful appearing bike effect. And also we've got the graphs to help us on our way. So for example, if I wanted to change that from frame 41 to say frame 30, all I do is just pull that back to frame 30 and that's it. Couldn't be simpler. So really all of these wonderful new effects within the effects menu, beautifully controlled by this wonderful graph system. And you don't have to use the graphs if you don't want to. You can just use the timeline as well. Now while we're on the subject of blue screens, we'll also take a look at this. We've now got the ability to produce garbage mats, and we can do that by using our keyframeable curves. So what we'll do is we'll take that clip into curves and just mask out the area of that ribbon which I don't want anymore. So starting at frame 1, just move on, and we can see now very cleverly, in the same way that it works within the effects menu, the HAL is going to work out all of the relevant moves between the points that I'm working on. So we can see moving through there, covering up that ribbon. And of course I can process that directly over, or indeed I can produce a mat. So we can see there that mat of that, and also masked out completely with the blue screen. So wonderful garbage matting capabilities within the HAL now. And of course as well, all of these facilities can be used creatively. We're talking about design after all. So let's have a look at what we can do with keyframeable curves. You can see here just a curve moving there. What about if we blur that and double it up? We get this wonderful globular effect, and we can of course colour that up, and look, we've got ourselves a very interesting background. So keyframeable curves, useful for garbage matting, but of course useful for creating wonderful backgrounds like this one. And it doesn't stop there. What you're all probably wanting to know is how we produced this wonderful effect here, this particle explosion at the end where the bike disperses into millions of pieces. Have we used a 3D system? Of course we haven't. We've used the HAL, and we've used the HAL using the new Transform effects package. This is found within the effects, and this is literally going to transform your video. Let's take this piece of footage here. What we're going to do is we're going to apply Transform to this. Now we can see here's the Transform menu. Going into that menu, what we're going to do is we're going to apply the airbrush to the whole clip as a form of matrix pattern. So we can see here what's happened is it's split it up into the shape of the airbrush over the whole screen. And of course all of these numbers here mean that we can adjust that. So for example, if I just first of all change the brush, we get a different effect. If I just change the pitch, we get a different effect. If I change the size of the dots, we get a different effect again. Each time I change any of these numeric values, we get a completely different result. And it doesn't stop there. We've also got the ability to muck up that pattern. So we can see here by using Dither, we're mucking up all of those paint brushes, and we can be as unsubtle as we like and completely smash up this video footage. And that's in fact what we've done. I've got a whole array of effects here that we've produced in-house to give you an idea of the scope of this Transform package. First of all, starting off here with a simple paintbrush over the whole clip. We can also, of course, change the numeric values and keyframe those, so we can see here we can get this wonderful sparkling effect over a piece of work. And again, completely different piece of footage here, a completely different brush, getting a wonderful tapestry-like effect. And each time I change the clip and the brush, we're going to get a completely different effect. Now, as I said before, we've got the ability to make our own brushes within Paintbox Bravo. So what happens if we take this kind of brush and apply it to that clip? Well, we get this wonderful metallic effect. And just imagine if we changed the size of those brushes and also the pattern. Again, we get a completely different effect. Again, a completely different clip here with a different brush. Wonderful bead-like result here, used in conjunction with the HAL stencil to produce this window effect. Wonderful results. And it keeps going on. What about simplifying backgrounds? What about adding text to backgrounds? Well, we can just use that same brush to produce this simplified version of that background. And again, we can use that in conjunction with the stencil to produce this two-toned effect. We've also got the ability to change the profile of our airbrush. So for example, if I just go into my painting now, and I'm going to choose to change the profile of that brush, simply by using this graph and pulling it around, you can see that each time I move that, we're getting a completely different ringed effect. The more I add to it, the more detailed that brush is going to get. Wonderful circular brushes, and of course I can apply that directly to that clip again and produce wonderful sort of frosted glass effects, and you can see here is an example of that. Wonderful effect there, and there's a comparison between the two. Really transforming video footage, and the list goes on. I'll just keep adding different clips and different brushes. We get these wonderful different effects. Again here a completely different effect, a completely different brush. And remember, these are all our interpretations within Quantel. Your designers are going to sit on this machine and produce completely different effects to the ones that you're seeing here. And that's the beauty of it, being able to apply your own fingerprint to your video. Now also within Transform effects is the ability to adjust the matrix pattern of our pixels in the form of filters. You can see here a few variations of filters that we've used. So you can see we've got a cloth filter working there, completely displacing all of the pixels to produce these really interesting results. And the list goes on. What else have we got? Well, of course, all of these results are keyframeable, which means that we can produce wipes and transitions within the system. So let's take this clip as an example. A very nice clip on its own. But what about if we add this kind of brush to it? Again, we've moulded this within the paint box. We've used an airbrush and a stencil to produce this wonderful 3D sphere brush, and that applied to the clip produces this wonderful transition, wonderful reveal here, almost 3D. Because we're using a 3D brush, it looks 3D. So really giving you an idea of how this can be used and keyframed. Again, we've got the same brush over a different clip with a different pattern. And of course, all of these can be isolated, so we can start to produce wonderful effects like this one. Great special effects within the system. And again, we can really go to town with our brushes. Because we make our own brushes, we can take this owl and we can produce a icon of it and produce a brush of it. And this is what it looks like. Just imagine how long that would take to keyframe that effect. And even if you could, you really wouldn't be able to get this wonderful motion that we've got within this example. And the list goes on. What about transitioning between two completely different clips? You can see there, copying the leaf pattern there to produce these wonderful wipes. And also, we can be as wild and as wacky as we like. We can really go to town producing abstract wipes like this one as well. Excellent effects, and just imagine if that pyramid was your company logo. Really, the effects are numerous, and really it's down to the designer and his or her imagination to really make this new Transform Effects package come alive. Another area where designers and producers spend a lot of time and money within the broadcast and the post environment is producing effects like this. 3D displacement mapping, and now we can produce this quickly on the HAL, and it couldn't be simpler to produce wonderful effects like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a water droplet on this clip. Now obviously I have to create the water droplet, or do I? Do I have to go and create a wireframe droplet, go through lots of menus, lots of mathematical matrices? Of course I don't. This is the HAL. All I need to do is find the clip that I want to use. In this case here, we've just got the water ripple, and apply that as a stencil to the clip that I want to apply the displacement to. Now all I need to do is take it into Transform and let HAL do the hard work. What the HAL will do is offset depending on the luminance and chrominance values of that clip to produce this wonderful 3D displacement, and that was produced in under 5 minutes. So not only is it very effective, but it's also very, very quick to produce as well. And we can use that in conjunction with, say for example, our colour corrector to give it even more depth, like this example here. And of course within the HAL we've got 1085 fonts. So what happens when we apply this kind of displacement via Transform onto text? Well, quite literally we can set it on fire and we can blow it away. Wonderful effects there produced within the system. Everything that you're seeing here today has been produced on the HAL using the new Transform Effects package. So within the last 30 or so minutes, I've shown you a handful of examples produced on the HAL with Transform Effects. Really showing you how HAL can now be taken into many areas of video design, from broadcast to post and even now to special effects. Put your HAL next to your Henry or your Edit box and you'll have a really powerful special effects package. What we've actually done for you is to produce a piece of work that allows us to show you how TFX with the HAL could be applied. The brief was to come up with a title sequence for broadcast. We decided to use something like the X-Files to produce a title sequence using Transform Effects.